Replacing coal with natural gas. China has been pushing hard to get off coal in the interest of cleaner skies and lower carbon emissions. Now millions of households are using gas for heating during the winter. According to China's Ministry of Environmental Protection, over 4 million have completed the switch, but some have experienced gas shortages. Will the rushed conversions trigger a gas supply crisis, and will coal energy continue to remain vital? From January to October this year, China's natural gas imports rose almost 25% year-on-year, and China has become the world's second largest liquefied natural gas importer, but there's still a shortfall. How can the authorities solve the problem, and how will rising imports affect the energy balance in the country and around the world? Moscow and Beijing have been cooperating to deliver Russian gas to China's growing market. Can Russian gas fill the gap? As the world's biggest energy consumer, what reform is China undertaking? And how can it balance aims of reducing consumption and keeping economic growth stable? The use of shale gas is a big success in the US, and China is thought to have the world's largest reserves. What's the future for the use of shale gas in China?
Beijing has been enjoying the clearest skies in the past 5 years since the autumn, but that might leave people who live in northern areas feeling colder this winter. China has been attempting to switch from coal to natural gas for heating, but a complete ban on burning coal was soon lifted because of the biggest gas shortage ever in China. How is China moving away from coal power? How will the growing gas shortage be alleviated, and what will be the solution to having both blue skies and adequate energy? To answer these questions and more, I'm happy to be joined in Beijing studio by Dr. Shen Yang, Senior Consultant of the Asian Development Bank, Professor Zhao Daojun from Peking University, and Zhang Libin, JD Attorney with the firm Broad and Bright. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to Dialogue, gentlemen. I'm surprised about the policy inconsistency regarding shifting our emphasis and dependence on coal to gas, because the complete ban on the use of coal was soon lifted. That was a radical difference from the previous policy option. What do you think of the chaos behind the policy execution?
Well, I think that the problem causing the switch from coal to gas is really not consistent with the technicalities which China should prepare for the transition, and the long-term goal is from coal to gas or other renewable energies, but the government officials in implementing the policy really has not done it in a way which is transitional and well prepared. So the abruptness of the manner of this implementation of policy caused the problem. Also, I think as we know, as reported on the media, that the problem is caused by the shortage of supply, both of the pipeline gas from Central Asia as well as the LNG supply due to the delay of the LNG terminal station built in Tianjin, which is supposed to build to import LNG for supply of the North China market.
What do you think of the major reasons that Mr. Zhang spoke of?
Good. I know Dr. Zhang for many years, and he's a very respected expert on energy and other aspects of public policy here in China. I just wanted to supplement what he said by saying that the Ministry of Environmental Protection of the central government selected what's called the 2+26 formula for doing this. In other words, the two mega cities, Beijing and Tianjin, and plus 26 smaller cities around Beijing and Tianjin were selected to go through the switch process. And in some ways, you can say whether it was a good idea for the Environmental Protection Agency to be taking the lead. After all, the mandate of the Environmental Protection Agency is rather narrow. It's to protect the environment. Then a complete switch, a fast switch, is what's after. But then there are issues of coordination of interests. There's the issue of cost to bear by some of the poor, especially those in the farming areas, in the poor countryside. And frankly speaking, there's also local governments, especially at the village level, that were not really up to date in building the pipeline to transport whatever is available. So there are lots of things. Policy coordination certainly can improve.
Do you think we can draw a parallel comparison between the policy inconsistency that we've been discussing and shock therapy, which is likely to be more consequential in terms of causing media debates, and that will inflict casualty on the image of the government? Because it seems that the authorities at different levels should have held policy hearings before rolling out any serious measures, but they didn't do that. And therefore we saw the strong and robust rebound of public opinions against policy execution.
Well, my personal view is that, first of all, I think in 2017, China made historical progress on this, reduction of coal use. So this is already good. So the issue we are talking here actually have solutions, but the local government officials failed. What they failed is that they didn't have a kind of emergency and risk control plan for that, because everybody knows that in every winter the gas, this shortage, the price is higher. Everybody knows that, and also everybody knows there will be problem when we implement some new thing in such a systematic way. So I think, in addition, I agree with colleagues that renewable energy actually is another solution. In the meantime, in Inner Mongolia, Hebei province, there's too many wind power, cannot be, absorbed by the grid. So this is a big waste. And in winter, the more, actually there are more, wind powers wasted. So we have been long discussion on this so-called energy internet. That means integrate both heating system and the electricity generation system. There's a lot of discussion on the governmental agency reforms, but this hasn't been done, within this year. But I strongly believe in next year things will be changed.
Things will be better, of course. Yeah. That's why we remain cautiously optimistic about tomorrow. However, in theory, we are blessed by the discovery of shale gas. In reality, we are caught unprepared by the gas shortage. Can you elaborate a little bit the embarrassment that we encounter in improving rapidly the current dilemma?
Okay. China is a country which is short of gas. Okay. China is big in coal, and China mostly I think should probably basically importing LNG and pipeline gas.
Excuse me, before you move ahead with more elaboration and articulation on the issue, are you suggesting that China is we are hungry. We're hungry for gas. We are obsessed with the gas shortage, and therefore we have to rely more on gas import from Central Asia, Caribbean countries, Caspian countries, and the United States, particularly after President Trump took away a hefty contract worth over $250 billion.
I think that given the current situation of the gas market in worldwide, there is a general surplus of supply of gas, and gas market is getting more and more liquidity overall. So China should be having no problem in importing gas in the future. If you look at what the gas market right now, there's still a surplus of gas, and only in China we're encountering such a shortage problem, which is a technicality, I think. And in the future, I think to avoid the over-depending on the imported gas, China should deepen its reform in domestic supply and production of gas, like coal-bed methane or shale gas or conventional gas in the future, and rather than just relying on the imported gas. For the source of importation, I think China should also diversify the source of imports rather than relying on one source. For example, China should import from Qatar, from Australia, and also including U.S. The shale gas, and that I think is the diversification will help China for the energy security. For the pipeline gas, China should further strengthen the cooperation with Russia for the eastern Siberian pipeline gas, as well as the west line, and also the Central Asia pipeline gas. That I think actually is somehow related to China, the Belt and Road Initiative, and China should very well balance the economic interests with those countries along the Belt and Road, as well as the political geopolitical interests with those countries. And I think that somehow is a general picture of solving the problem of the importation of gas.
A second look, Mr. Zhang, we are embarrassed with the chronic issue of protectionism in the Chinese market. For example, what do you think of the energy price inconsistency with the natural gas priced at a much lower level in the international market? In China, it's just the opposite. What do you think of the growing sense of protectionism, and do you think it is a high time for the central authorities in particular to break up the monopoly on the natural gas prices?
Well, this is a very complex question to answer. I'm not very good at statistics. People generally blame the three energy majors that happen to be dominating the oil sector for too much of a share in the domestic market. But you have to bear in mind that with natural gas, earlier Dr. Zhang talked about pipeline gas and LNG gas. He also mentioned that there is also more global liquidity. Now these are all macro trends. But once you start importing pipeline gas, you don't really have a lot of flexibility in the pricing. And these are usually called the take-or-pay contracts. And the price that was set when you sign the contract and the going price, the spot market price, especially when it comes to LNG, they have huge differential. Actually, one of the causes this time in China for the shortage of gas is not a physical shortage. In other words, we have some storages of gas in China, but these storages of gas were priced in a way that was way higher according to the take-or-pay contract. So if they sell the gas now, they would have to, the holder of the gas will have to lose money. And this time around, we also had a shortage of supply, a technical shortage, should we say, from Uzbekistan. And that causes some psychological effect. I'm not as sure if a liberalization of the gas supply market is going to be the best solution, because you also have consumers, especially those in the rural areas, who have to do beans counting. We have consumers who are farmers who are suffering this time, not just from the switch from coal to gas, from coal to electricity. You have farmers who have electricity, say, supply 24 hours of the day, but they cannot afford 24 hours. They would rather just limit, electricity use to a few hours of the day. So there are lots of issues here. It's not just a simple matter of price. It's a matter of consumption power as well.
What do you think of the risk assessment regarding energy prices? For example, some of the international agencies have pointed out recently that a regional conflict in the Middle East is likely to cause strong fluctuations in the energy price. Other than the geopolitical rivalry, what do you think of other areas where you're going to see more of the uncertainty?
Well, my view is from the long run, all the fossil fuels price will slowly go down or keep, in a straight line. But the current crisis of gas, I think, is technical, and theoretically there are technology, there are money, and there are reform or like a policy supportive method which can solve the problem. So the international, if we're talking about risk control of international price of gas, I think that's not a big issue. Just my personal view. For example, the problem in Central Asia or Middle East, like Qatar, like the other countries, suppliers of gas, I think they are in very intensive discussion with Chinese, the three major companies, and also the private sectors. As I know, in the China's eastern coast, there are many LNG stations under construction.
Right.
So
just the one in Tianjin that's behind the schedule.
That's right. Yes.
So if China is moving to a kind of green economy, electric cars, and also U.S. from a consumer to a supplier, so this major change, and India's demands cannot rise as high as China, So I don't think there's big risk in the future supply. But for China's issue, we need more management, I think, measures rather than price.
Right. Thank you very much. You are watching Dialogue with Dr. Zhang Libin, Dr. Zha Daojun, and Mr. Shen Yiyang. And the discussion here are issues such as why China suffers gas shortage and the sudden policy switch from our dependence on coal to the use of gas increasingly here in China. When we come back, we'll take a second look at some of the challenges that we face in popularizing the use of natural gas, particularly liquidized natural gas and pipeline natural gas. Stay with us, please. Welcome back. Now, do you believe the superiority of political institutions in China would guarantee our more effective governance when it comes to the use of clean and renewable energy? Because we rule by decree, and that guarantees the rapid expansion of the Chinese economy and caused envy from our Western competitors. But do you think this is likely to be sustainable?
Well, if China continue to rely on the administrative decree type of thing to have the energy governance, I don't think that that's going to be effective, because the whole idea of the market reform in energy is to move away from the central planned system, which is based on the monopoly of the national energy companies, to a system where there's more market access by the more diversified and more multiple players into the energy market. And I think that that's the key. And to assist that, to accompany that, I think the government need to realize that how to adjust its role in regulating the energy market is very essential. The gas shortage as we encounter this time is exactly one bad example that the government should learn, rather than just giving the decree just very abruptly and changing over swiftly is not working, and obviously work on the negative effect, which is against the switch from coal to gas, which is a very good thing. The China government should learn to how to conduct the public participation, to consult with the public on the pricing of the natural gas, because this is really considered to be a public utility sector, right, not any purely commercial business anymore when it comes to the consumer side.
Right. There's always a strong voice, strong skeptical voice about the relationship between the government and the market, the visible hand and the invisible hand. When it comes to the energy market, Dr. Zhang, following the successful conclusion of the 19th National Congress of the CPC, more Western observers show their sense of uncertainty about whether we'll do more to respect the market forces in allocating key resources. For example, the energy prices will be at the mercy of the whims of those policy makers, or do you think the new generation of the Chinese leadership would push and advance the role of the market forces?
Well, if you think about it from the point of view of better environmental protection, if you want a greener economy, you probably want to step back a little bit by saying it's the market that works the best. Because coal in China happens to be priced very cheaply. And if you, let's say, remove the government or reduce the government's intervention into this, then we have very little chance of improving the air quality. We'll continue to rely on coal even for the expand the use of coal. Now, where the government this time, but the governance by decree, falls really short, is that it gives a one stroke solution for all different regions. We used to accuse institutions like the World Bank of saying one size fits all, and this is what precisely happened here in China. And earlier, Mr. Shen mentioned a phenomenon in the northern part of China, that is, in the wintertime, we have a lot of wind power that generates electricity. But this wind power is not well integrated into home heating. So a lot of that electricity actually gets wasted, either wasted or they simply shut down the wind farms. A technical term for that is curtailment of wind power. So what should be done is the government should encourage two things. One is a general movement towards green use of energy, right? Not cheaper use, but greener use. That should be one thing. Another is the government should really find ways to incentivize off-grid developments. Why are we in such a trouble this time? It's because we have the same solution, the same plate for everyone. And the government is very good at integrating things and requiring all different suppliers of energy into one grid. If you allow off-grid development, one of the very weak areas of Chinese energy policy is the government simply is not supporting off-grid energy development.
By the end of the day, perhaps it's not an issue of whether we'll be able to terminate radically the use of fossil fuel. It is rather an issue of whether we can afford to use the cleaner fossil fuel. Technologically, do you think this is doable for population and consumers scattered throughout our neighboring cities and provinces? Because central authorities are most concerned about having blue skies. Therefore, they rule by decree to shut down the small and medium-sized enterprises that are likely to produce more of the environmental pollution. But this has caused a lot of grievances and may lead to more social unrest. What do you think of, say, let's move back to examine the possibility of, technologically, the possibility of using cleaner fossil fuel?
Well, actually, I think even if we look at the Energy Bureau's recent discussion, so the cleaner use of coal is in their agenda. So the issue is that, when we have to move forward renewable energy and to make the whole power grid more cleaner. In addition, China is the largest, has the largest resource of coal, and from the development viewpoint, that resource also have to be used. This is my personal view. So I think now, like IGCC and other new technology already been tested, but not yet, spread, in different area. So I think technically we have some solution, but we have to also consider the cost and also the overall target of our greener power grid.
But Li Bin, we are years from the Copenhagen Agreement, and we are a party to the Paris Climate Change Agreement. That means automatically that we have to gradually reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and to encourage low carbon development. So we are very supportive of globalization and climate change, in sharp contrast with what President Trump stands for. If you look at his pullout from Paris Climate Pact. What does that mean for the policy options? Mr. Shen said wisely and correctly that China is a country rich in fossil fuel coal deposits in particular, does it mean we have to rely on coal for generation of much of the energy, causing more environmental decline?
Well, I think that China has now already realized that the coal could not be relied on as a long-term energy supply. Given that China's commitment to the Copenhagen and Paris Accord, China, and also because of maintaining a blue sky for the interests of everyone here, and also in the country, that China should switch to coal from gas, and that I think is a long-term policy. But having said that, I don't think that China will completely get rid of the coal, and I think the coal issue is to make it cleaner. Okay, if it is there's technology to make the coal cleaner and make it more commercial viable, I think that's the solution. So the problem of coal is to reducing the percentage of coal in the energy mix, and also at the same time, increasing Chinese use of gas and also other energy sources like nuclear and renewable energy, and to have a diversified energy mix. That is the future. The issue of coal is that it's cheap but it's dirty. If China want to really make it sustainable and viable to have the switch from coal to gas, China need to have the law to make the external cost of coal internalized, so that it is going to be environmentally costly for people to continue to produce coal and to consume coal, just like in the U.S. At the same time, for the gas, which is now very a high price in China, China should try to deepen the reform of the importation of gas, right, and let the benefit of the low pricing of the gas in the world market, being transmitted into, right, China's domestic market, so China's domestic market benefit from the world low-level gas, pricing, and I think that actually goes to what I was, talking in other places, that China should deepen the oil and gas sector reform, and I think the key is probably to liberalize the importation of the gas, and I think that also goes to the breakup of the monopoly of the importation of gas, as well as China trying to make use of the long-term LNG supply agreement, as well as the spot market, with more buyers buying from outside sellers for the LNG and pipeline gas.
Maybe you have been able to cover all the key points in your conclusion of this meaningful discussion on gas shortage and improvement of the liberalization of the energy market. In fact, it's not only a matter of how to improve environmental protection law, but also an issue of accountability for local government officials. And in that particular area, the role of the media should be strengthened to act more as a watchdog and supervisor to guarantee we do have an environmentally friendly place in China to sustain our healthy development of the economy. I'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.